Hey everyone, and welcome back. Now, it's been a couple of days since I've done an update video on Jasmy, and we did actually get a pretty important piece of news coming out on the 30th of August concerning Jasmy. So I wanted to go over that, as well as just kind of get a general sense of where we're sitting, kind of in the overall market, and specifically as that relates to Jasmy. So let's go on ahead and dive right in. So as we can see on the crypto bubbles, everything, well, almost everything, I guess we got a couple green ones around here, but almost everything is red and pretty red overall. I think a lot of this is pretty expected as far as what a lot of us have been bracing for the month of September. Historically, we know that September has been a pretty horrible month for Bitcoin overall. So, I don't think any of us are expecting anything positive. And overall, actually, I think we're probably maybe expecting to see a lot of bleeding. There has been actually some calls for potentially some drops below some like key support levels, which could send us back into, the mid to low 40s. Again, I don't know. It might be a little bit too early to be calling for that at this point, at least from my perspective, but no one knows, right? Like anything can happen, and it's possible that could happen. So, but, again, today we're focused on Jasmy specifically. So, obviously Jasmy is here at minus 6.5% over the day. Obviously not great, but I guess better comparatively to than some of these others. But yeah, definitely, kind of staying in line with the market as far as kind of the overall pullback is concerned. Nothing too crazy overall. If we look at the Jasmy chart, again, these are kind of some lines that I've drawn a while back. And so, I'm kind of leaving them here to see how things play out. Overall, we can see that we did, I kind of called this out last video, but it's very obvious that we've broken below this initial support line that we may have been following for at least a minute or two. And we've kind of hit on the support of this descending wedge. So we can see twice here, we've seen some wicks come down. Haven't quite touched the support yet, but they've gotten pretty close. I think the main question here is, are we going to continue to bounce off this support and maybe see some relief either back up to this level of now what was support but is resistance, and potentially up to the top of the line, or are we going to continue to break down and maybe even through this wedge, right? Like, just because there is a wedge forming doesn't mean that it's, it's always going to break up. It could still break down. We don't know. Historically, given kind of the performance of the market in September, I certainly am not expecting a break to the upside. If we did see a break to the upside, I personally would be shocked. I don't, it's just hard to say though, with all the kind of pessimism and wait and see going on within the market. Like, are we even going to see any sort of, realistic momentum to the upside? I think that's kind of hard to say. We may kind of continue just falling along this trend line, and, hopefully we don't break it. But if we do, obviously kind of down at this like 0.1475. So, like 1 and 4.75 cents, I guess. This is kind of where we would be after that. I mean, we're way down to 0.007 at that point is what it looks like. So obviously, that's not something we'd want to see, but ultimately, if we fall past this point, I guess we've got potentially a little bit of support here, possibly at like 0.0125 ish. But ultimately, if we do break this level of support, we do have quite a ways to fall, which again, is something that we should be, kind of expecting. One thing I am considering, again, you need to make your own decisions. This is not financial advice or anything of that sort. But one thing I am considering, I'm toying with the idea right now is, I have started trading on Margex. They're a leverage exchange. And so you can see on Margex, you can trade with up to 50x leverage on Jasmy specifically. And so if we're looking at the hourly charts here, obviously we can see a huge wick down. I think this was essentially kind of like a cascading effect of like liquidations that were coming in here. What we can see is we have started to bounce since then. So what I'm toying around with the idea of it is potentially taking, a leveraged long position, maybe seeing if we could get back up to like the, 0.1871. And if we get really lucky, maybe up into like the 0.192. Again, I don't expect to see a sustained move upward, but with, 50x leverage, that does give you a pretty decent amount of flexibility as far as, this could be 2, 3, 4. At this point, I think this would be close to like 500% gains. So, I have done fairly well, with Jasmy in the past. Here we can see 2 Jasmy trades that I made actually. One I closed out at 104%, and the other one I closed out at about 106.5%. These were only 30x leverage instead of 50x, just because I wasn't certain on where the price was going, and so this was kind of a trade that I decided to do. Again, very small. this is a very dangerous market to be trading in. So I'm obviously not, mortgaging the house or anything ridiculous to do that. But this is something that I'm considering, maybe playing the bounce here. If you are interested in trading and doing leverage trading, you can feel free to use my Margex link below. If you do participate, I think you get up to $10,000 of bonuses, and they're also doing a $500,000 Caspa airdrop for high volume traders. So if that's something that you're interested in and would like to be a part of, feel free to use the link below and sign up. It does help me out, and hopefully, if you enjoy trading anyway, it could be a good help for you as well, just because the leverage does really make the gains fairly substantial off of relatively small moves if you are pretty good with those. So anyway, moving on, one thing I wanted to look toward is the liquidation map. As this has kind of increasingly become a mainstay on my channel, the liquidation map is something that I actually do look to fairly frequently, because at least from what I've been seeing, particularly over the recent past, but pretty consistently, I would just say overall, the price always seems to follow liquidations. And so this is actually really, really interesting. What we could see from when we were looking at the charts, we could see those massive wicks down, and obviously, that cleared a ton of leverage, because we can see the leverage here on shorts on longs, excuse me, is not really here. A lot of the leverage here has been completely wiped out. So if we look, there's a massive more amount of longs to liquidate than there are shorts. I mean, if we look, even if we were to move all the way down to 50,000, that's only going to liquidate about 630 million. Where if we were to move up to 62,000, this would liquidate almost 2.5 billion. So almost 5 times the amount. If we go up on larger time frames, it continues to stay the same. Here we're 1.15 billion. Up to here, we're looking at, 5.5 billion. And then, again, on 30-day, same type of thing. It does start to get a little bit bigger, up at 3.3 billion as we drop below 50K. But again, same thing. We're at 8.5 billion up here at 66 on longs. So as we can see, the market has become very, very lopsided towards favoring liquidating shorts. And so, as at least it has seemed to be pretty prevalent in the past, it looks like we might be seeing a pretty strong move to the upside, if nothing else than to liquidate leverage. And if looking back at the shorts, or at the chart here, excuse me, even I don't expect to see a sustained move to the upside. If we do see a move like that, granted, we're looking at the Jasmy chart, but let's say it moves in kind, right? Like that's something where we could definitely see, up at the maybe 2 cents, 2.2 cents. We could potentially see a bounce off this top trend line. Again, I don't expect this move to be a sustained move at all whatsoever. I just expect it to wipe leverage. But nonetheless, if we are trading, and we are trading with leverage, this can be very, very substantial moves in the market for us. So this is just something I like to keep an eye out for. Overall, this would be a $10,000 move all the way to the top. That's about a 20% on 100x leverage. If you're trading Bitcoin, that's 2,000%. So obviously, it can be very meaningful amounts. Overall, you do need to be very, very careful. So if you're not comfortable, I would just say don't do it. It's probably not worth it. Or if you do want to do it, go very, 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 very small, at least so you can get the hang of it before you start going in with larger amounts, because it's a very risky game to play. So moving on, there's a new bit of Jasmy news that actually came out on the 30th of August, which is actually a pretty interesting development. So Jasmy has launched a beta version of their carbon credit exchange NCCX, which supports domestic voluntary credits such as NCCC credits. Now, ultimately, if you want to go through and read this article yourself, you're more than welcome to. But ultimately, I read through it, and essentially what they're trying to do is they're trying to create a blockchain marketplace, essentially, for trading carbon credits, which this, I think, is a very reasonable idea for carbon credits, right? Because obviously it's on the blockchain. We can tell that they're not faked. We can tell that they're there legitimately. So as long as the onboarding onto the blockchain is well vetted and essentially has like a good process to it, once it's on the blockchain, they can essentially live there forever, and people don't need to worry whether they're legitimate or not, which is pretty cool. And so voluntary carbon credit. So the carbon credit system overall is massive. It's like $400 billion and expected to grow massively, especially as the world does become at least, a little bit more cognizant and aware of climate change, global warming, all the things, whatever we're calling it these days. The world is becoming a lot more aware of it. And so that's something that obviously is pushing a lot more eyes and political will and social will toward being, environmentally friendly, right? And so carbon credits are one of the ways to do that, because it essentially allows people who are trying to benefit the world, they get a certain value for that. And then usually people who are polluting the world, but maybe necessarily polluting the world, they can buy these carbon credits to kind of offset, and then that money flows to these people who are trying to essentially go more green and do things more sustainably. So overall, there are definitely flaws to the carbon credit system, but I think overall it's a good solution to an otherwise imperfect system. So it is something that I do think makes sense. The voluntary carbon credits, they're right now sitting at about a $2 billion, because they're a certain like special type of carbon credit. So they're about $2 billion of the total market. But according to this article, which is from Boston Consulting Group, which is a very well-regarded consulting firm, we can see that by 2030, the market's expected to reach between 10 and 40 billion, which is a massive amount of growth from 2 billion, which is in 2021. And that's also important to note that this was 4 times its value in 2020. So keeping at that pace in 2024, I mean, we may already be at the 10 billion number. I couldn't find some great data in terms of what the voluntary carbon market is for. I was able to find a lot as far as the overall carbon market, but even then that kind of varies fairly widely. But overall, this is like not a small amount, right? And so if Jasmy is doing something where they're essentially creating an exchange that allows this to happen, and they're actually, I believe, partnering with the government of Japan, because Japan is helping facilitate these credits. This is, again, another use case where Jasmy is being supported by a legitimate, internationally recognized government, and they're producing real world value and real world innovation with cryptocurrency and blockchain, which is exactly what we want, right? So this is something that to me is really good. And it's a small piece of news, but overall, it's a really important piece of news, because this just goes to show you like the vision and the quality and the, I guess, like the ability to produce that the Jasmy team has, right? So this is something that, in my opinion, is bullish, even though, we're sitting in a very uncertain and boring and scary market. It's this type of stuff, these people don't quit, even though, a lot of retail and optimism and a lot of this stuff is kind of gone away. These people don't quit. They're still here building. And when retail comes back, they'll be like, oh, geez, wow, like, this is a really big change from when I was here last, right? Which is exactly what we want to see. So anyway, that's my update for today with Jasmy. Hopefully you found it useful and informative. If you did, please do like and subscribe. It really does help me out. I'm trying to hit 1,000 subscribers by the end of October. At this point, it's looking like we may actually be able to do it by the end of September, which would be really cool. So if you did find the information useful and you think I earned it, please do subscribe. It really does help me out. Also, liking and commenting, both of those do help push me to more people in the YouTube algorithm who might find this information useful and informative as well. So, if you like it, please give it a thumbs up. If you have any, comments, questions, concerns, anything you want to talk about, or just want to say hi, please do leave me a comment. That also does really help as well. I definitely can see a difference when people are commenting in terms of both the amount of people that watch, but also the amount of people who also comment as well. So, it's kind of a positive feedback loop in that way. So anyway, thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next one.